Real honest answer is it depends, right? So it depends on a lot of things. Where you are in your business, for example, if you're busy enough where you can turn customers away, setting a minimum is a good strategy, because if you're getting too many inquiries coming in and you're finding you have a lot of like lower budget clients that are trying to get in the door, setting a minimum helps weed out the people that are not a good fit and set that bar, right? Like you must be this tall to ride the ride, you know?
Right.
And that's just what it comes down to. Like, this is my standard of the work that I do. And that can work really well for people. Then you have to decide, do I publish my minimum on my website, right? So there are a lot of things that go into not just setting the minimum, but then how do we communicate that minimum to the potential customer? So I like to do everything, like I was just saying, like customized. I think it's really important to look at the individual. So I've been in business for 17 years on my own, right? So I'm entering my 18th season. So what did I do last year? I finished season 17 of my business, which is like
Wow.
snaps, right? And what I find interesting, because I have my Facebook group, there's about 7,000 florists in there right now from all around the world. And I ask two questions just before you get in, like, what's your ability level? Like, are you aspiring, or have you been doing this? And sometimes people have been florists for 40 years, right? Or they've been florists and maybe they've been florists for 5 years, right? And it's so fascinating to me to see how people will identify themselves. I've been in business for 40 years and I'd say I'm aspiring, right? Versus someone who's like, I've been in business for 3 years, I'd say I'm experienced.
Right.
And that is often how it goes. The longer you've been in business, the more humble you can be about how much more you have to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And the newer you are, when you're in business for 3 years or 5 years, you're like, look, I've been in business for 5 years. And let me tell you everything that you need to do. You haven't been tested in 5 years yet. Like
Right.
5 years is great. And that is like, it's a hump in your business where, like, if you make it to your 5 in your business, like, you should be celebrating and tooting your own horn that, like, you've been in business for 5 years,
Yeah.
3 to 5 years is that threshold. But when you're in business for 5 years, your minimum is going to be different, or your thought process on the minimum is going to be different than someone who's been in business for 40 years, right? Mm-hmm. And again, it's going to depend, right? The person who's been in business for 40 years may have 40 years, may have a really strict minimum, or they may have no minimum at all, right? So it's based on your experience and what your market can bear. So if you're in an area, for example, where you do tons of high-end weddings, having a $5,000 minimum might be just perfect for you. Publishing it on your website might make perfect sense. But for me personally, where I am, I'm in Vermont. We do destination weddings mostly, meaning people come here. I don't travel. People are like, how do you do that? I'm like, they come to me. So They come here, and their budget could be like a huge gap. Like, I have some weddings that are $2,500, really small weddings, nothing fancy. And then I have an $8,000 wedding in June that's like all the bells and whistles and more. Right. So if I put on my website, I have a $3,000 minimum. I'm missing out on that $2,500 super sweet gig that I booked, right? Mm-hmm. And for my $8,000 customer, they might be thinking, is this $3,000 florist going to get what I'm looking for here? So when I used to publish my minimum on my website, which I did for years, finally, you have to get brave. Like, there's a moment where you're brave and you're like, I'm doing it. I'm setting a minimum. That's it. I'm doing it. And it takes bravery, and you have to talk yourself into it, right? You have to talk yourself into, like, I'm going to set the minimum. I'm really going to do it. I'm really going to tell them I'm going to do it now. Here I go. I'm hitting publish. And now my website says I have a $1,500 minimum, right? That was my first minimum. And then it went up to like $3,500 or something, right? So finally it got to a point where my $3,500 minimum was significantly below the average spend that people, when they made a purchase with me, right? So here I have on my website $3,500 minimum, but my average sales higher than that. why is my minimum 3,500? So it was a moment of reckoning, of realizing this is arbitrary. This number does not pertain to you, the person inquiring to me. This is just a number I'm throwing out there. Just throw it to the wall and see if it sticks, right? So there's a change. There's an ebb and flow in business. So sometimes you should have an idea. I always put it this way. If you don't have a set minimum, like we don't leave the door for less than 3,500, at least have minimums on each of your itemized pieces. So your bridal bouquets start at X. Your centerpieces start at X. Your, installation start at X. So that at least when you're putting together the pieces and presenting a budget to somebody, there's a rhyme or reason for why they should be expecting to spend this minimum. And the way I do it is I present it as a custom minimum. I say, for your event, this is the minimum that would be requested. And one of the smartest things I do, if I do say so myself, is I list that minimum on every single client's proposal, right in the payment terms. So before they accept the proposal, before we do anything, they see right there, this is what the minimum is for your event. So they know that they can't fall below that. They can lose 3 bridesmaids, but you still have a $4,000 minimum, right? You can have half as many guests, but you still have to have a $4,000 minimum for me to block off my day or my weekend for you. Right. So we have to set our rules, and then we have to change the rules. And that's my really, really long answer to, should you set a minimum?